Hello guitar teachers, welcome to the channel. So we're doing my very first book review today. Very excited about it. This is going to be a two-parter, by the way. Part one, which is this one, is just going to be kind of like a general review. Then part two is going to be some ways that I found to really maximize the use of this book that I'm very excited to share with all of you. Christopher Parkening Guitar Method Volume 1. So just straight away, we'll get this out of the way. I do love this book. I've put so many kids through this book, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I love it. It's the one that I was put through. And since then I've gone through a ton of other classical guitar methods, and I've always come back to this one. So for me, this is the one. So that being said, it is not without its flaws. I believe it has some very objective weaknesses and then some subjective weaknesses. So first we'll take a look and we'll go over what I believe to be the objective weaknesses, and then after that I'll kind of give my take and go more into the subjective. Oh, and before I forget, because I got to play the YouTube game right, so if you like this video, make sure to press the button that indicates that you do and subscribe and all that stuff. Okay, here we go. So it starts out, as many books do, with this whole dissertation on the staff and different types of notes and how to read music, basically. I, for the life of me, will never understand why books do this. If I were to pick this up and try to go through it in a linear fashion and I was a complete beginner, I would probably never proceed past this section. I would probably give up. There's just so much information at once. There's no opportunities to practice it. What's the point of having this here? I don't hold this against him though, because everybody seems to do it, unfortunately. What I do take issue with is the handling of teaching the notes on the top two strings. So he starts out with E, F, and G, and then he'll go B, C, D on the next page. Very common, very solid starting spot, right? I mean, we're dealing with key of C, no sharps, no flats. We don't have to make any shifts to get into these notes. That's all great. The issue is, in these 4 pages, there's not one recognizable song, right? So you gotta imagine you get like an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, or something like that. There are songs that they know that with this information, they're perfectly capable of playing, right? They could play Hot Cross Buttons. They could play Rain, Rain, Go Away. But he doesn't do any of that. These are very musical examples, like they sound nice and everything. But if a kid comes to you and they love music, and you can send them home on day one playing a song that they recognize, you have done your job. And old Christopher does not have your back on that whatsoever, unfortunately. So given that, that's why I usually start here, waltz in A minor. This is a lot of information for a day one, but it is a good test on whether or not this book is going to be a good fit for the student, or whether they're too young. One of the objective weaknesses of this is that it tends to move very fast. So you can supplement it with other materials, right? But at the same time, there is a certain age or cognitive level that this book is appropriate for. So here's where we get to the next big flaw, in my opinion, which is that we're teaching notes on the low A string, right? So you get this piece, and then this piece, and then this scale that only uses the C, and then this scale that only uses the C. And then you get notes on the low E string, and you get these pieces, which, the scale is going to use them all, but really your new information is confined to about these 2 measures. And then you're expected to play this. Variations on a Spanish theme. Wonderful piece. I love this piece. Kids love this piece. This is the kind of piece that after they learn it, you can ask them, okay, do you think that we should get out a metronome and work this up so you can play it even faster? And 10 out of 10 times they will say yes. The issue is, if you're not supplementing this with something else, this is such a hard piece to learn. It is straight eighth notes from here to here. There is no room for rhythmic error whatsoever, and they have to know the notes on the low strings that they just learned in those, maybe 4 or 5 exercises, like the back of their hand, to have any amount of success in this. There is a lot of repeated material, but there's just as much material that is almost repeated, but is slightly different, which can throw them off quite a bit. The last big objective weakness that I want to talk about is just the general sequencing. There are a lot of pieces, like that one that we were just talking about, where it doesn't make sense why they're where they are in the book. Like this English folk song, kids struggle on this all the time. Like it doesn't look hard, right? But just the way that you have to play it, it gets a little bit finger jumbly in the left hand, and they have to play adjacent strings that are really close to each other, which they're not too used to. So kids 10 out of 10 struggle with this one. Likewise, this Giuliani Allegro, this comes from his Opus 51. I love his Opus 51. This one should not be right here in this book. The Spanish Waltz that comes on the next page is easier than both of those, so it's just a little bit silly. I lied, there's one more glaring weakness in this book, and it's this very last section, the supplementary pieces. So if I'm understanding, the point of this section is to give you a lot of pieces that could go earlier in the book, but he just put them in the back for some reason. A lot of these pieces, especially some of the later ones, are more difficult than the last section that precedes it. So in a way, it sort of serves as a final section of the book, a final run of pieces. My issue with it is that the ones that could be placed earlier in the book should be placed earlier in the book. It just seems sort of lazy to me to shove all of this in the back and say, if you want it, it's there. Some of these could go on earlier. Some of them are right where they belong at the end of the book, and you can sort through them at your will. It is very easy as a teacher or as a student, when you're going through this in a linear manner, to come to a piece and say, you know, I don't really like the sound of this one too much. It doesn't really teach me anything new, so I think I'm just going to go on to the next piece. It's much more difficult to get to a piece and say, wait, I should check the back of the book to see if there's another one that I should do before the next piece. So before I go on to subjective weaknesses, I just want to point out that if you're looking for a supplement that really fills a lot of the holes, I really like the Sagreras method. Generally, I like to keep my kids in a 2-voice exercise and an arpeggio exercise at the same time for years. The Parkening comes up a little bit short on material for arpeggio exercises. The Sagreras does not. There are so many arpeggio exercises in here. In fact, I would go so far as to say they get very redundant, which is why I wouldn't recommend this book on its own, but that's a whole other video. It's $25. This is books 1 through 3. So the difference between book 1 and book 3 is very vast. So your kids will probably be in this for years if you put them in this. It's a really fantastic book. All right, so subjective weaknesses. I really want to save most of the in-depth discussion for the next video. It'll just fit a little bit better there. But real quick, it doesn't have any opportunities to really be creative, which A, it's a book, and B, it's a classical guitar book, right? So that's kind of to be expected, unfortunately. And B, there are a lot of opportunities that he could use to really go in depth with, you know, just some base level theory that he just doesn't take for whatever reason. For example, we have this prelude in C major that happens very early in the book, and then I think about 2 pages later there's a prelude in G. Great beginning arpeggio exercises, I love them. I think they're in the wrong order, but anyway. Would be a great opportunity to say, you know, this is what an arpeggio is. We have 3 notes, so let's try playing it, you know, with some different patterns. You know, as classical guitarists, we've all been through the Giuliani, like 150 arpeggio exercises, so we know, like, did you give me 3 notes, I'll go to town. But, you know, for kids, not so much, you know. It can be kind of amazing to them to see that, okay, once we have these notes, these chords, you just put them in like a different order, and sometimes it's really cool and sometimes it's not as cool. Would have been great for him to list 5 and just say, you know, try playing them with these different patterns. Pick one you like and learn the whole song that way. So if you value your kids being, you know, comprehensive musicians, you want them to be able to, you know, read stuff, write stuff, maybe even improvise, certainly analyze. You're going to have to supplement this book a lot with a lot of that stuff. The good news is, like I kind of alluded to earlier, there are a lot of really obvious places to do so where he didn't, but you certainly can. And yeah, we'll go into that in the next video. So I hope you like this. Again, do the YouTube things, and I will see you soon.